But at least we agreed on one thing. Bella did have a lot of life to live, and I was certainly going to make sure she got the opportunity. In that moment I vowed not to let Bella miss out on one human experience, no matter how trivial it might seem to me in my 100-odd years. It was with that mindset that I went to Alice to ask her advice. "Alice, I need your help," I said after reluctantly watching Bella drive off with Charlie. He hadn't spoken a word to me when he met us at the airport, just grunted in my direction and then started thanking Carlisle profusely for making sure Bella was given the best possible medical care. "Edward, who do you think you're talking to?" Alice chirped. "I've already picked out her dress." "Of course you have." I sighed. "So you don't think she'll be too angry with me, not about prom?" she said ominously. I waited for her to continue, but she just smiled and started to walk away. "Alice," I called after her. "A little help?" "Nope." "Sorry," she said, not sounding the least bit sorry. "You're on your own for this one. And good luck with it. Who knows, maybe you'll listen to her for once." That'd be a nice change. I watched her, perplexed, as she and Jasper ran off together. I hadn't picked out anything useful from her mind, seeing as it was completely dominated by thoughts of playing dress up with Bella and finally getting to style her hair the way she'd been wanting to for so long. I tried to focus on the fact that at least it sounded like Bella would enjoy her prom. If she figured out some other reason to be upset with me, I guess I would just deal with it when it came up. Though we'd only been apart for a few minutes, I was already anxious to get back to Bella. I was sure she was currently being lectured by Charlie, but hoped he got the worst of it out of his system by the time they got home so she and I could relax together and talk about what had happened. We hadn't had any real time alone since she'd first woken up, and I needed to make sure she was really as okay as she seemed to be. I knew how good she was at putting on her brave act for the sake of those she loved. I just hoped she knew she didn't need to pretend for me. 177. As I approached the house I realized all hopes of being alone with Bella right away had been wishful thinking. Charlie was nowhere near finished. And another thing. No more unsupervised dates, he shouted as I took a seat on their porch to listen in. I hoped somehow Bella knew I was there. Maybe it would help comfort her while she listened to Charlie's frustrated rant. We weren't unsupervised. Dad. If you'll recall, I was with his entire family. Oh, right. Well then, no more dates. It wasn't Edward's fault I ran off. She yelled. It wasn't any of their faults. It was my own. I got scared and I left when I should have stayed and worked things out. Like you told me to. She added, playing on Charlie's pride. I should have listened when you told me to wait and think things through. It's my fault that I was being stubborn and I don't want you blaming Edward for what happened. It's because of him and his family that I'm here now, that I'm alive. They found me after. I heard her voice break for a second and I knew what image had been conjured up in her mind. I took a deep breath waiting for her to continue. After I fell. She finished, all traces of fear once again hidden. But you wouldn't have gotten hurt if you hadn't left, and you wouldn't have left if it weren't for him. He spat, saying the last word like it was an explicative. I'm home now. Dad, I'm home and I'm safe. And Edward is going to be in my life, so I'd appreciate if you could at least try to be civil to him. He'll be in your life if I say he'll be in your life. He said, sounding appropriately fatherly. I couldn't help but smile a little, because as firm as he was being with Bella, I could also hear the wavering in his thoughts. He knew he wouldn't be able to keep us apart and he didn't want to lose Bella's trust and friendship trying to make it happen. We'll see each other at school, you know. Bella said. Fine. You'll see him at school. And then you'll come right home. Are you grounding me? Dad. Seriously? She asked, exasperated. Charlie thought about it for a moment, his thoughts growing weary. He was ready for the fight to be over too. No, you're not grounded. But I want to know where you are if you're not coming straight home. And I want you home before it gets dark. That's fine. You know I'm not much of a night owl anyway. She said, sounding like she was finally smiling again. And I guess he can come over here, you know, for dinner and stuff. He added. The words were forced, but I could tell he was trying. Thanks, but I want him gone by 8. Evenings are for families and I think you owe your old man some quality time. You put me through a lot. Bells, I know. Dad, I'm really sorry, I know you are. Just promise me you won't run off on me again, I promise. I'm not going anywhere, I smiled as their conversation drew to a close, running around to the back of the house and up through her window. She'd promised Charlie she wasn't leaving anytime soon. I would definitely. 178, remind her of that when the inevitable conversation about changing her came up again. I hoped that her dedication to her father would keep the subject at bay for a long time, but somewhere in the back of my mind was the nagging reminder that Bella was more stubborn than that. When Bella opened the door and saw me lying on her bed, she gasped and looked like she was going to faint. I couldn't understand her not expecting me to be there. I thought she realized that after nearly losing her, I was never going to be far away. Edward, you'll give me a heart attack one of these days. She whispered. Instead of answering her, I reached my arms out and pleaded with my eyes for her to come join me. Without a moment's hesitation, Bella had crawled onto the bed and was resting her head against my chest. We didn't speak. We just basked in the love we could both feel radiating from one another. I'd thought we would talk about everything, spend the evening reliving and reassuring, but the way Bella snuggled into me as if I were her safe harbor was all the convincing we seemed to need. We were back where we belonged, together and content. I'd missed the feeling of wrapping my arms around her and watching her steady breaths as she curled up against me. Logically I knew Bella was safe and we were home, yet I was having a hard time convincing myself it was true. I was glad to be incapable of sleep, because I knew if I were able to dream, I would be forever haunted by nightmares of Bella lying broken and bleeding. I hadn't realized how much I needed to feel her warmth again, have her sleep peacefully beside me so I could begin to convince myself the nightmare was truly over. Bella, I finally whispered as the sun started to set. Are you asleep? She mumbled drowsily, pressing herself more tightly into me. Sleep, my love. I'm here and nothing's ever going to hurt you again. Then I waited while her breathing slowed and I felt her drift off completely. She barely spoke that night, and the few times she did her words were incoherent. I heard her mumble what sounded like my name once, which was then followed by a warm and loving sigh. I cherished it and hugged her tighter, watching her in the darkness as I hummed her lullaby the rest of the night. Early the next morning, I heard Charlie gently turning the door handle. I slid out from beneath Bella's embrace as carefully as possible. Just in time to hide in the closet. Charlie watched her for a few moments, a tender smile spreading across his face, then he softly closed the door and retreated down the stairs. I waited until I heard his car pull away, then found my place once more at Bella's side. I glanced at the clock and noticing how late it was, wondered if Bella had planned on returning to school today. None of us had talked about it, and in the grand scheme of things it didn't seem like one more day would matter. Instead of waking her to ask, I decided to enjoy her peaceful sleep a little while longer. As the hours passed I was glad I'd let her sleep. She clearly needed it because it was almost noon by the time she woke up. Yawning and rubbing her eyes, she turned to look up at me. Wow, she said, grinning widely. Even better than my dream. I smiled down at her and kissed her forehead, and when her cheeks grew pink I just had to kiss those too. Thanks for staying, she whispered when I finally pulled my lips away. There's nowhere I want to be besides here with you. School, she cried, suddenly sitting up straight and diving for the clock beside the bed. 179, I think it's a little late for that now. I said, feeling a twinge of guilt for not waking her earlier so she could decide. Don't worry though. I don't think anyone expected you back today. You only just got home. Give yourself one more day off, I guess. She mumbled, not entirely convinced. Besides, with all of Charlie's new rules, who knows the next chance we'll have to spend a whole day together, so you heard all that, huh? I nodded and she let herself fall back onto the bed. I hate that he's blaming you for everything that happened, he's right, you know. I said sadly. I am to blame. For everything, would you please stop that? Edward. I'm tired of you always thinking everything is your fault. Well, whose fault is it then? She paused for a second and then said with a smile. James. I rolled my eyes. That's not what I meant. Bella, well, it's true. James is to blame for all of this. Him and his stupid game of hide, seek and kill the human girl. Bella, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Can you please not talk about your almost death so nonchalantly? It makes me really nervous. Why? Everything worked out fine. I'm here. You're here. Both of our families are safe. James is gone. Can't we just move on? I laughed, though I was still feeling terribly uncomfortable by how indifferent she seemed to be about the whole thing. I hated to think that Bella was passing the events off as just part of the territory. Fall in love with a vampire, eventually someone's going to end up trying to kill you. No big deal. Bella. I want to move on. I do. I want to forget that you were ever in danger, that you were ever hurt the way you were. But can't you see how difficult it is for me to forgive myself for allowing it to happen? No. I can't. I don't understand why you blame yourself. You didn't know they were coming. Alice didn't even know they were coming until it was too late. You didn't purposely put me in danger, and in the end it was you who saved me. Against all odds, by the way. Miraculously. By doing something we both thought was impossible, but don't you see? If we weren't together, you would have never been exposed to that danger to begin with. If I didn't exist, monsters would still only be myth and legend to you, rather than real-life threats. Stop it. She said fiercely, sitting up again and turning towards me. I don't ever want to hear you talk about not existing again. Edward, can't you see it breaks my heart when you say things like that? The thought of a world without you in it is worse than any of the supposed nightmares you think you've subjected me to. I love you, and whatever I have to face for us to be together. That's my choice. It's worth it. You're worth it, because without you in it my life doesn't make any sense. You think I don't belong in your world, but the truth is I never really belonged in mine. Being with you, being loved by you. That's the first thing that's ever made me feel truly whole. So please, no more talk about taking that away from me. I may not have known what my heart was missing, but now that I know what it feels like. I don't know how I would survive without it. 180. All I could do was stare at her, amazed that she had just put into words everything I'd been feeling but didn't know how to express. I never knew how empty my existence was, because it was all I had ever known. Now that I had Bella, thinking about going back to the way things were seemed incomprehensible. I simply couldn't believe that she felt the same way, that I was to her everything she was to me. Yet there she sat, eyes filled with tears and nearly trembling, pleading with me to understand. Not knowing what to say. I did the only thing that made any sense in such a moment. I kissed her. I felt her breath catch as I pressed my lips to hers, more passionately than I had ever allowed myself. I felt her fingers tangle in my hair, but I wasn't afraid as I reached up to cup her face in my hands. My thumbs traced idly along her cheeks as her breathing sped up. She locked her arms around my neck and her body pressed against mine. Something in the back of mind was telling me I should stop her, but as I felt her heart racing against my chest I found it impossible to let go. I poured all the love I had for her into that kiss, hoping it would be enough, that she would know I felt exactly as she did. There was nothing in this world worth living for except her. And now I knew she felt the same way. Time seemed to stand still, and I had no idea how long we stayed locked in our embrace. I couldn't bring myself to care. Eventually our lips parted and our breathing returned to normal, and before either of us could say a word, Bella's stomach growled. So out of place in our blissful moment, we both laughed before coming back for one more quick kiss. I'm neglecting your human needs. I teased. Not all of them, she said shyly, blushing and turning away. Before I let myself think about that too much. I'd picked her up and was carrying her downstairs as I had our first morning waking up together. She laughed as I set her down and mimicked what she had done that morning, filling a bowl with cereal and milk. Technically it wasn't the right time of day for breakfast, but the gesture felt right somehow, like we were going back in time to when things had been simple. Before James and nightmares, before pain and fear. Everything was right again and there was only our love for each other and my desire to take care of her. We talked the rest of the day, about every trivial and unimportant thing we could think of. We were making it clear that both of us had every intention of moving on and putting it all behind us. Deciding we didn't want to ruin our day together by watching Charlie glare at me all night. I left when I heard his car pull up. The only thing making it possible for me to leave was knowing that in a few hours, night would fall and I'd be in her room and in her arms again. After another peaceful night, Bella insisted on returning to school the next day, unwilling to fall any farther behind. She hated the cast she was stuck in, but said it helped her remember the importance of sticking to the details of her false story. The hand James had bitten remained bandaged until all that remained was a slightly raised scar. I cringed when she told me she could tell it was colder than the rest of her skin, a constant reminder that it was a scar like none other. Listening in on all our fellow classmates' minds as Bella explained what had happened was fascinating. Most of them passed it off as just another example of the clumsy Bella they all knew so well, though some of them had an inkling that there was more to it than that. Fortunately, none of them had nearly creative enough imaginations to come up with anything that would cause problems for either of us. As the end of the year drew closer and thoughts of taking Bella to prom came back into my mind, Alice became increasingly more persistent. 181. How are you going to ask her? Oh, can I tell her please? When can she come over so she can try on her dress? Do you think she'll let me practice on her hair first, to make sure it's perfect? Hurry up, Edward, only a few days left. After a while I stopped responding, though it didn't slow her down any. I sifted through a dozen different scenarios of how I would ask Bella, hoping to distract her. Eventually though, she realized I wasn't planning on telling Bella where we were going until we got there. This is completely unfair, Edward, she said once during the brief time I came home each evening. Bella got to spend time with Charlie and I was able to see my family, though somehow they usually managed to find something to bicker about. To you or to Bella? I asked, frustrated as ever. Because I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be about her, to either of us. I was looking forward to spending the extra time with her, bonding. You can still do that. She still has to get ready even if she doesn't know what she's getting ready for. Well, I say it isn't fair to her, because essentially you're taking the choice away from her. Again, I don't think that's the best way to start the evening. You already told me she wouldn't be mad about it. That's when I saw you actually asking her to go with you. And now, she closed her eyes for a moment before sighing. You'll have a bit more trouble convincing her to go along with it, but in the end I guess it doesn't change anything. Then after a dramatic pause she repeated. Anything. She'd been hinting for weeks that something other than the actual prom was going to upset Bella, but refused to tell me what. It's your own stupid fault. She'd mutter, and that would be the end of it. I'd accepted that she wasn't going to give me any insight, so I let it go yet again. Charlie had grown somewhat more tolerant of me, mostly because I was obeying his rules so diligently. Of course he didn't know that I spent every night in Bella's room, holding her while she slept and counting the minutes until she kissed me good morning. By the time I got up the nerve to ask his permission to take Bella to prom, he merely sighed and recited a new list of rules in a manner that made me think he'd been waiting for me to ask. Straight to the prom and straight back home. No little side trips, got it? I need to know where you kids are. Have her home by midnight. And if Alice insists on putting her in heels, promise me you won't let her fall and break the other leg. Okay, of course, sir. I won't let anything happen to her. Ever again, I believe you, kid. Just don't give me a reason to doubt it. I won't. Pleased to have Charlie's consent and excited that I could finally start hinting to Bella that I had something special planned. I found it difficult to keep my tone casual. I hoped she wouldn't immediately figure out my plan, although it wouldn't have surprised me. Prom was all anyone could talk about lately, and while the subject wasn't of particular interest to Bella, I assumed she'd been paying at least enough attention to know when it was. Bella, I asked the following afternoon during our drive home. Do you have any plans this Saturday? 182. Saturday, she said. Not a hint of comprehension in her voice. No, I don't think so. Why? I wondered if you wanted to spend it with me, don't I always? She teased. Well, yes, but I was thinking of doing something different. Special. Her eyes grew wide for a moment and I was sure she'd figured it out. Then her expression softened again and she smiled kindly at me. Whatever you have planned will be wonderful. I'm sure. She looked somewhat nervous when I told her Alice was looking forward to helping her get ready, but she reluctantly agreed to let her have free rein. I fought the urge to eavesdrop through the medium of Alice's mind while Bella was having her hair and makeup done. I was curious how she was handling it, but decided the two of them deserved to have the girl time Alice was so excited about, without my intruding. When Bella emerged hours later, I was stunned into silence by her beauty, even if it was momentarily tainted by the furious expression pointed in my direction. Alice was beaming, but Bella was shaking her head at me, mouthing never again. I stifled my laugh and ran up the stairs to meet her. Sorry, I whispered, then kissed the spot right below her ear. She relaxed into me slightly and let out a soft hum. You're forgiven, she said with a small giggle as I stepped back, really taking her in. You're too beautiful for words, my love, I told her, grinning as she blushed through the makeup she wasn't used to having on. It's all Alice. I swear. I have no idea what she did, but whatever makes me pretty, I guess. You're far more than pretty. Bella. Just as you always are. All Alice did was make you stand out a little more than usual. You deserve to stand out tonight, you're not exactly blending in either. She said, eyeing the tuxedo I was wearing. You look really nice, I couldn't let you have all the fun by yourself. I said. She rolled her eyes, muttering. Fun, right. Under her breath. Just one more thing. I said, running to my room and back in less than a second. I held up the small handful of freesia I'd picked out earlier and clipped several blossoms into her cascading curls. There, I sighed, tracing my finger down her cheek and enjoying the small shiver that ran through her. Now everyone who's near you will get a small hint of the divine scent I get to enjoy every day. Her cheeks turned impossibly redder, but she smiled at me as I leaned in to kiss them. Alice giggled beside us, then reached out to give Bella a quick hug as I pulled away. Thanks for putting up with me. Bella, she grinned. You do look lovely. Smell lovely too. She turned to me with a stern look. Don't forget to say good night to Carlisle and Esme, she reminded me. They'll be disappointed if they don't get to see her all dressed up, of course. I said, trying to ignore the confused look on Bella's face. We'd come this far. I wasn't going to answer any questions now. She'd figure it out soon enough. 183, I'll see you guys later. Alice added with a wink, which only seemed to intensify Bella's baffled expression. I waited for her to ask me something, anything, but she seemed to bite her tongue and instead simply followed me into the living room. Oh, Bella, Esme said, reaching out to hug her. You're absolutely stunning. Thanks, she said shyly, returning the embrace. You do look marvelous. Carlisle added, walking to Esme's side. And it was really nice of you to let Alice have her fun. I know she can be a bit overwhelming at times, but she always has the best intentions, no problem. Any time, she said, though her quick squeeze of my hand told me there wasn't going to be a repeat experience anytime soon. Will we see you two again later tonight? Probably not. I said. What with the Charlie-imposed curfew and all, well in that case, let me just say again how wonderful you both look. Have fun, and Bella, as always you are welcome here any time, thank you. She said again, smiling as we turned to walk to the door. During our brief conversation, Alice had gotten herself ready and she and Jasper were already on their way. See you soon. Rose and Emmett are already there, so don't take too long, she thought as they'd made their soundless exit. Though Bella had appreciated Carlisle and Esme's kind words, the smile on her face had nearly disappeared by the time we stepped outside. She was looking increasingly irritated every second and I wondered if she had finally discerned what my plans were. I held her hand tightly and steadied her as we walked down the stairs, just as I'd promised Charlie. I had tried to talk Alice out of the heels, well, heel I should say, but she insisted it completed the outfit, even if there was only one. When we reached the car, I lifted Bella up and placed her in the seat. I fastened her seatbelt for her and just barely resisted the urge to plant one soft kiss on her neck. Unfortunately, Bella's expression told me even that wouldn't have improved her mood any. At what point exactly are you going to tell me what's going on? She asked as we drove away. I'm shocked that you haven't figured it out yet. I said, smiling teasingly toward her. I was glad when her expression shifted, though I couldn't read the new look on her face. I did mention that you looked very nice. Didn't I? Yes, I answered simply, happy she approved and hoping she felt as proud to have me at her side as I was to have her. She glanced down again at the dress, as if she couldn't believe she was actually wearing it. After a few moments, the irritation crept back onto her face. I'm not coming over anymore if Alice is going to treat me like guinea pig Barbie when I do. She said flatly. I held my smile as I waited for her to put the pieces together. If she had any guesses, she certainly wasn't letting on, though I did wonder what thought had crossed her mind and caused her heart to suddenly start racing. I was about to ask if she was feeling all right when my phone rang. I, 184, glanced at it, hoping I could ignore whoever it was, and was a little concerned when I saw Charlie's name flash across the screen. Hello. Charlie, I answered, looking over at Bella. Charlie, I gave her a reassuring smile while I listened to Charlie's voice. I could tell he was amused, even before he explained why. So it seems you're not the only one vying for Bella's attention tonight. Tyler is standing on our porch and seems to be under the impression he's her date for the evening. You're kidding. I said, laughing at the absurdity of it. I'll say one thing for Tyler. He was persistent. What is it? Bella asked, frustrated to be out of the loop. Why don't you let me talk to him? I told Charlie, who laughed loudly as he passed the phone to Tyler. Who is this and what do you think you're doing taking Bella out tonight? Tyler yelled. I could hear Charlie's laughter get louder in the background. Not cool, man. I asked her months ago. Hello. Tyler, this is Edward Cullen, I said as pleasantly as I could manage. He was delusional and it was rather amusing, but that didn't change the fact that he was still trying to lay some kind of claim to Bella when everyone knew she and I were together. I'm sorry if there's been some kind of miscommunication, but Bella is unavailable tonight. As long as we were clearing things up, it seemed as good a time as any to make things extremely clear to him. To be perfectly honest, she'll be unavailable every night, as far as anyone besides myself is concerned. No offense. And I'm sorry about your evening. With that I shut the phone with a smile, feeling quite accomplished. However, all my happiness dissolved when I saw the look on Bella's face. Her eyes were filled with tears and she was bright red, though I knew the color of her blush well enough to know it was not embarrassment that was causing it. She was angry. She had realized where we were heading. Was that last part a bit too much? I didn't mean to offend you. I said gently, knowing that wasn't what she was upset about, but figuring an apology of any sort couldn't hurt. You're taking me to the prom. She spat as if it were an offensive word. I knew the idea of dancing, especially in public, wasn't her first choice for any evening, but really I couldn't understand why she was so opposed to the idea. I thought she would want to see her friends, celebrate the end of the school year with them all. Don't be difficult. Bella, I begged. Why are you doing this to me? She asked angrily. Honestly. Bella, what did you think we were doing? I asked, pointing at my tuxedo. Suddenly I remembered what I was going to ask her before the phone rang and now given her over-the-top reaction. I really needed to know. What had she been expecting tonight? I watched her, my mind racing through different possibilities but none of them making any sense. When tears started streaking down her cheeks I felt positively miserable. This wasn't how the night was supposed to go. And Alice had said she wouldn't be mad about prom, which meant. This is completely ridiculous. Why are you crying? I asked, now more than a little worried about what was truly upsetting her if not the prom. 185, because I'm mad. She spat. I tried to remember exactly what Alice had said. It would be more difficult convincing her to go along with it, but it didn't change anything. Bella, I said, staring deeply into her eyes and probably using what some might call an unfair tactic. I didn't break our gaze as her heart fluttered erratically. What? She asked, already sounding less upset. Humor me. I pleaded, hoping she could somehow put aside whatever had been boiling underneath the surface long enough to enjoy herself. At least a little. Fine, she sighed. I'll go quietly. But you'll see. I'm way overdue for more bad luck. I'll probably break my other leg. Look at this shoe. It's a death trap. As she spoke the words, she lifted her leg and pointed her toe to illustrate the point. My eyes traveled of their own free will from her foot up her calf, to where the ruffles of her dress bounced off her knee. The way the dark silk and chiffon contrasted her creamy skin made a wide grin spread across my face. I breathed. Remind me to thank Alice for that tonight. Alice is going to be there. She asked, sounding moderately more at ease. With Jasper, and Emmett. And Rosalie, I added, hoping that wouldn't bring her rage back. I watched her expression go from angry, to nervous, to curious. She cocked her head to one side, eyes tightening, and asked. Is Charlie in on this? Of course. I laughed.